The envelope from Columbia lay open on my childhood bed when my parents stepped into the room. I had read the acceptance letter 3 times, each line brighter than the last, each sentence a promise I had worked nearly a decade to earn. But the way my father gripped the doorframe told me something in my world was about to rupture. This story is an original creation by the writing team of the Revenge Pulse channel, inspired by the hidden corners of family life, and told with the purpose of fostering emotional connection and spreading understanding. Dad cleared his throat. "Marina, we need to talk about your college fund." My pulse stumbled. "What about it?" Mom reached for my arm, her touch too soft for the weight of her expression. "Sweetheart, we had to use it." The words didn't land at first. "Use it for what?" "For Logan." Dad said, "Your brother got into trouble again. We paid his debt. It was the only way." Something inside me folded in on itself. All of it. Dad nodded once. Every cent. That fund had more than $240,000. I whispered, "It wasn't yours to touch." Mom's voice cracked. "Family comes first. Honey, Logan was in danger." I stepped back, and I wasn't. My future wasn't. Dad stiffened. "Do not make this harder than it already is." "It's already impossible," I said. "I worked for years. I saved everything, and you handed my life over like it was pocket change." A tremor of anger flashed across Dad's face. "We did what parents do. We protected our son, and destroyed your daughter," I said, my voice breaking before I could stop it. Mom tried again, gentler. "You can still go to medical school. There are loans, scholarships." "I already earned my way," I whispered. "Every morning shift, every weekend at the clinic, every hour studying while Logan slept until noon." Silence tightened around us. Dad exhaled sharply, as if weary of my reaction. "You need to understand. Marina, this family survives together." "Then why am I the only one paying the price?" Neither of them answered. I looked down at the acceptance letter still trembling in my hands. Columbia had offered me a place among the best. My parents had offered me a decision: surrender the dream or fight for it alone. If you have ever stood at the edge of a moment that changes everything, stay with me. My story continues not because it is easy to tell, but because someone out there may need to hear that their future is worth defending. I walked into the bank with a hollow feeling spreading through my chest. I had barely slept, barely breathed since my parents' confession. The teller recognized me and offered a polite smile, but my voice came out thin when I asked, "Is Clara Whitmore here?" Moments later, Clara appeared from her office, her expression shifting the second she saw my face. "Marina, come with me." Inside her small glass room, she closed the door gently. "Tell me what's going on." "My parents took my entire education fund," I said. "More than $240,000. I need to see the withdrawals." Clara didn't hesitate. "I figured something was wrong when your father came in last week." She pulled up the records on her screen and turned it toward me. "Marina, the total withdrawn wasn't $240,000. It was $268,000. The breath left my lungs. "That is not possible. I never authorized anything." She clicked through several files. "These forms have your signature, but," she paused, "I have known your handwriting since you were a child. These signatures look forced." "Forged," I said, the word scraping out of me. Clara lowered her voice. "I could not legally refuse the transactions, but I documented every irregularity. And there is something else." Her hand shook slightly as she opened the security footage. My father appeared on the screen, shifting anxiously at her counter. Beside him stood Logan, pale and fidgeting, and behind them, broad-shouldered, calm, wearing a tailored coat, was a man I had never seen. "Who is that?" I asked. Clara's jaw tightened. "His name is Victor Salerno. The bank has received federal alerts on him for years. Your father did not pay off gambling debts. Marina, the floor felt like it tilted beneath me. Clara met my eyes. You are caught in something far bigger than your family admits, and you need to decide what you are willing to uncover. Her words settled over me like a warning and a beginning. I was still replaying Clara's warning when the knock rattled my parents' front door later that evening. It was firm, deliberate, nothing like a neighbor dropping by. My father answered, and the moment the door opened, a woman's voice carried through the hallway. Thomas Hale, I am Agent Rowan Price with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We need to speak with everyone in the home. My mother clutched the back of a chair. The FBI. This must be a mistake. Agent Price stepped inside, sharp, calm, wearing the kind of expression that left no room for denial. 2 agents followed her, one already scanning the room, the other carrying a small black case. Where is Logan Hale? She asked. Dad straightened. He is not under investigation. This is unnecessary. Actually, Price replied. Your son is connected to several financial transfers flagged in a suspicious activity report. These transactions total more than $260,000 and involve an individual under federal surveillance. My parents froze. I stepped forward before Dad could speak. You mean Victor Salerno? Her eyes flicked to me. Yes. And you are Marina, the daughter whose signatures were forged. A faint nod. We will need your statement. Logan stumbled down the stairs then, rubbing his eyes like he had just woken up. Why are there agents in the house? Agent Price turned to him. Logan Hale, we have questions about your involvement in data theft, laundering activity, and your association with Victor Salerno. Logan laughed under his breath. This is ridiculous. Price opened the black case, sliding out printed message logs. These are communications traced to your devices. You shared private financial profiles with criminal networks. My mother grabbed Logan's arm. Tell them you did not do this. But Logan's face had gone gray. Dad tried stepping between them. He is our son. He needs help. Not Price cut him off. He will get help. After he answers to federal law. She turned back to me. Marina, you are not a suspect, but you are the primary victim. For the first time, my parents looked at me as if they finally understood what they had done. And for the first time, I realized there was no going back. By morning, the house felt colder, not from the weather, but from the silence my parents wrapped themselves in. Mom barely looked at me as I packed a small bag. Dad kept pacing, muttering, This is getting out of hand, as if the disaster had arrived on its own. When I finally stepped toward the door, he snapped, Where do you think you're going? Away, I said. I will not sit here while you pretend I caused this. Mom's voice wavered. Marina, your brother is terrified. He needs us. He needed help 2 years ago. I said, he needed boundaries 10 years ago, and you chose avoidance every time. Dad raised his chin. Do not talk to us like that. We have always done what we believed was best, for whom I asked softly. Because it was never for me. Mom reached for my wrist. Please, stay. Let us handle this as a family. I pulled my hand back. You handled it when you forged my name. You handled it when you drained everything I worked for. I am done being the sacrifice. Dad scoffed. You are being dramatic. I met his eyes. That word sounds a lot like guilt trying to disguise itself. For a moment, no one spoke. I opened my wallet and counted what was left, $74. The total of what my future had been reduced to. Mom whispered, If you walk out that door, Marina, I do not know how we fix this. I paused only long enough to steady my breath. You cannot fix something you refuse to see. As I stepped outside, my phone buzzed. A text from Logan family sticks together. You better not forget that. I closed the door behind me, letting the message sink like the final line of a chapter neither of us could undo. Rachel's apartment smelled like burnt coffee and lavender detergent, a mix that should have comforted me. Instead, I sat rigid on her couch, clutching my phone. She watched me carefully. "Marina," she said, "you look like someone scraped you out of your own life." "They used everything," I whispered. $240,000 gone, and more I never knew about. Before she could respond, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it, but something in me was too tired to resist. "Marina Hale," a calm male voice asked when I answered. "My name is Grant Ellison. I am a forensic accountant," Rachel mouthed, but I lifted a hand to silence her. "Why are you calling me? I have been reviewing several cases connected to Victor Salerno," he said. "Your name appeared in multiple financial trails. I would like to meet. I believe I can help you recover what was taken." A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. "Unless you can undo forgery and felony theft, I doubt it." "Actually," he replied, unbothered, "that is precisely my specialty." Rachel's eyes widened. "Ask him to come here," she whispered. I swallowed. "Fine. Today? 1 hour?" he said. When he arrived, Grant Ellison looked nothing like the government agents who had stormed my parents' house. No dark suit, no badge, just a man with tired eyes and a leather folder tucked under his arm. He sat across from me like he already understood the shape of my grief. "I read the trust documents from your grandmother," he began. "Evelyn Hartwell was meticulous. The education trust she created has a triple damages clause." I stared at him. "Meaning what?" "Meaning the moment your father accessed those funds, he became liable for 3 times the amount taken. That alone is more than $400,000. The room went very still. "And there is more," he said. "Salerno's assets have been frozen. Victims will be compensated. But your case, your trust, could unlock additional restitution." Rachel leaned forward. "So, you are saying Marina can fight back?" Grant nodded once, firmly. "I am saying she already has everything she needs to win." I had imagined courtrooms as distant places, wooden benches, hushed conversations, lives decided in the space between sentences. I never imagined my own family sitting in one, looking smaller than I had ever seen them. Agent Rowan Price guided me to a seat. "You do not have to speak until the prosecutor asks," she murmured, "but your presence matters." My father refused to meet my eyes. My mother kept twisting a tissue until it shredded between her fingers. Logan appeared on a large monitor from a secure room, pale and jittery, as if the walls around him were closing in. The prosecutor, a sharp-voiced woman named Catherine Walsh, began without ceremony. "Logan Hale, please explain your involvement with Victor Salerno's organization." Logan swallowed hard. "It started with gambling. I thought I could beat the system." His voice cracked. "I actually did. Once. Won more than $310,000. My mother gasped. Dad's jaw clenched. Logan continued. "But I lost it. All of it. And then more. Salerno sent his people. And I panicked. I started giving them client information from Henderson Financial, names, accounts, profiles. They kept asking for larger data sets. I kept agreeing, thinking I could buy myself time." Catherine's tone sharpened, and when that was not enough, Logan closed his eyes. I went to my father, told him I owed dangerous people. He thought the money would end it. Dad finally looked up. "I did it to protect my son." "You forged my name," I said before I could stop myself. Everyone turned toward me. Logan's face contorted with shame. Dad whispered, "Marina, I thought we could fix it before you ever knew." Catherine raised a hand. "Let the record show that Marina Hale was unaware of any withdrawals, falsified signatures, or financial activity related to the trust or savings account." Logan's voice broke. "She should hate me. She should—" I stood slowly. I do not hate you, I said. But you did not just take my money. You took the years I spent building something you never cared to understand. Mom choked back a sob. We were trying to save him, and in doing so, I said, you made it clear which child you were willing to lose. No one spoke after that. Even Catherine paused, as if giving space for what had settled over the room. Logan whispered, Marina, I am sorry. For everything. I do not expect forgiveness. I just need you to know I never meant you meant every choice you made, I replied. And I am finally choosing myself. Dad covered his face with both hands. Mom folded over, crying silently. On the screen, Logan wiped at his eyes with a trembling hand. Catherine cleared her throat and addressed the court. We have heard enough to proceed with formal charges. Logan Hale will receive consideration for his cooperation, but the damage to the victim, Marina Hale, is substantial. The word victim echoed through me. Not an accusation, a recognition. Agent Price leaned close. This is the moment everything shifts. And it did, because as the session adjourned, my family fell apart behind me, and I walked out with the one thing none of them expected me to have left: my future. The courthouse hallway felt too bright, too clean for what my family had become. I waited outside the sentencing room, hands clasped to keep them from shaking. When the door opened, Catherine Walsh stepped out first. It will be over soon, she said gently. But none of this ends cleanly. Inside, Logan stood between two marshals, wrists bound. He looked older than his 30 years, as if fear had carved him hollow. My parents sat in the front row, clinging to each other the way people do when the ground no longer feels stable. Judge Harmon entered and read the charges without flourish. Logan Hale, you are sentenced to 6 years in federal custody, with consideration for your cooperation in dismantling the Salerno network. My mother let out a broken cry. Dad flinched, but said nothing. Logan lowered his head. I deserve more, he whispered, barely audible. But thank you. Then came my father's turn. Thomas Hale, the judge continued. For forgery, misappropriation of trust funds, and obstruction in a federal investigation, you are sentenced to community supervision and mandatory restitution. Dad exhaled shakily. A man spared prison, but not shame. Mom clutched his sleeve when the judge addressed her. Margaret Hale, evidence suggests you enabled these actions but did not participate knowingly. You will complete mandatory counseling related to codependency and financial boundary violations. The words seemed to crush her. I was just trying to keep my family together, she murmured. The judge's response was soft but merciless. Sometimes holding too tightly is how families are ruined. When the session ended, I rose to leave, but Dad reached out. Marina, please, talk to us. I stopped, but I didn't sit. I do not know how to talk to people who stole what I spent my life fighting for. Mom wiped her eyes. We can change. We will fix this. No, I said quietly. This is not something you fix. This is something you learn from, if you choose to. Logan lifted his head, eyes red. I will try. Marina, I swear I will. The marshals led him away before I could answer. Outside the courthouse, the air was cold enough to sting. Rowan Price walked beside me. You did well, she said, and you walked out with something they did not. What is that? Your freedom. I did not respond. I just kept walking, because for the first time, the path ahead of me belonged only to me. The letter from the Victim Compensation Division arrived on a gray morning, slipped under Rachel's apartment door like an afterthought. I opened it expecting another delay, another request for documents, another reminder that justice moved slower than healing. Instead, I read one line twice to make sure it was real approved restitution, $610,000. My breath left me in a soundless rush. Rachel looked up from her laptop. Is that? It is. I whispered. It is done. She launched forward and wrapped me in a hug that somehow steadied the ground beneath my feet. Marina, this is your life coming back. Later that week, I met with Grant Ellison in a small office he borrowed from a colleague in Midtown. He slid a folder toward me. Columbia has reinstated your acceptance. He said, your deferment was honored. You can start this fall. I stared at him, stunned. I thought, after everything, I thought they might choose someone else. Grant shook his head. You did nothing wrong. You survived something severe and still managed to cooperate in a high-level case. Admissions committees appreciate resilience more than perfection. I let out a shaky laugh. Resilience. I used to think that was just a word people threw at you when they didn't want to help. He smiled faintly. And now I think it is what you cling to when everything else collapses. He nodded as if that answer mattered. You will do well, Marina. You can build something steady now. By the end of the month, I had signed a lease for a tiny studio in Harlem cracked windowsill, humming radiator, and a view of the street that glowed warm at night. I stood in the middle of the empty room, holding the key. Rachel FaceTimed me from her office. You are officially a New Yorker, she said. How does it feel? I looked around the space that was finally mine. It feels earned. That evening, as I unpacked the single box that held my textbooks and the photo of Grandma Evelyn, I whispered, I made it. Grandma, I am still going. The room settled around me, quiet and open, as if waiting for whatever I chose next. Orientation week at Columbia felt surreal. Every voice around me carried ambition, exhaustion, hunger for something larger. When the program director asked for volunteers to speak about personal motivations, my hand rose before I understood why. Afterward, a young student approached me, maybe 19. Eyes shadowed with something familiar. What you said about financial trauma. I have been dealing with that too, she murmured. I nodded. Then you know how heavy it is. She hesitated. Do you think it ever stops defining you? It stops, I said, but only when you choose who you want to be next. Later that afternoon, Prosecutor Catherine Walsh caught up with me outside the lecture hall. Your talk reached a lot of people, she said. If you are willing, we could use your perspective for a community health research project. I blinked, surprised. You want me involved? You lived what most people only read about. She replied. Your voice gives the numbers meaning. I told her I would consider it, and she smiled an expression softer than any she had worn in court. That night, I had dinner with Rachel in my tiny studio. She brought takeout and kicked off her shoes as if my apartment were an extension of her own. You built this life, she said between bites. Not because someone handed it to you, because you fought for it. I set down my chopsticks. I am still fighting. But it feels different now. Different how I looked at her. Grateful. Because now, I am not fighting alone. She clinked her plastic cup against mine, a quiet toast in a small room that suddenly felt full. The package arrived on a quiet Thursday. Addressed in handwriting I recognized instantly. Inside, wrapped in brown paper, was a small wooden carving, a caduceus intertwined with a laurel branch. Logan's work. His letter was short. I cannot undo what I broke, but I want you to have something I made without hurting anyone. I am trying. Marina. I folded the note carefully. The ache it carried was real, but so was the gentleness I had not seen in him for years. That evening, during my first hospital shadowing shift, a new resident asked, "What pushed you toward medicine?" Most people say it is a calling. I held the carving in my palm, warm from my touch. For me, it is choosing what comes after the worst parts of your life, I said. Healing is not about fixing what broke you. It is deciding who you become after the breaking. She nodded as if the words landed somewhere meaningful. Before heading home, I slipped the carving into my pocket and looked down the long corridor, bright lights. Steady footsteps, the hum of something alive and forward-moving. If you are listening to my story now, hold on to your own turning point. And if it helped you feel less alone, share it or pass it on. Someone out there might need the reminder that their future is still theirs to claim.